Ah, yes. So here we are. Welcome back to another episode of Turning the Table. My name is Adam Lamb, and I'm here with my co-host Jim Taylor. And hey, and as always, we are discussing staff-centric operating solutions for restaurants in the hashtag New Hospitality Culture. And we have a great guest for you today, and someone who's been on the inside track of this for a while, and has a proven track record of actually making these concepts actually live and real. So we're going to bring in Jaime Mansour, who is the VP of Operations for True Food Kitchens, in just a moment. And Jim, I'm kind of curious because again, what happens when you invest in your staff? We've got some questions about, like, okay, so I think most of us have kind of empirical idea of what it would look like if we invest in our staff, and yet there's probably some operators that are a little reticent to do so. I'm reminded of the fact that there are some folks who are still trying to make up ground financially from the pandemic and the shutdown, and that's also another interesting thing about True Food Kitchens and Jaime, the way that they actually approached the shutdown and continued to open restaurants all the way through the pandemic, which a lot of places weren't. But I guess the question comes up, like, how do you actually know what to invest in, how much to invest in? If you don't have deep pockets, how can you still become the preferred employer in your market? And I think that there's things that Jaime's going to talk about that are going to be eye-opening, because there's some things that sure are going to take a rethinking of our financial performance, the way that we might invest in training, and other benefits that there is an associated cost with. But how do you calculate that ROI? Because I think sometimes it's not as apparent as some might think. Does that make any sense, Jim?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, from some of our previous discussion with Jaime, I think there's going to be some interesting, just good insight on, everybody's about growth, right? And so some interesting insight from him, a little bit about, responsible growth in order to properly take care of people, what that looks like in terms of, investing in career path and that kind of thing. I think they're a brand that has really strong buy-in, and I think Jaime's a good part of that. So looking forward to having some good discussion with him.
Yeah. And then I guess the last question I would have, again, as an operator, is how much is enough? At what point do you see what traction you have and pull back? And, I think we're on record of saying, if you're not talking to your associates, you're actually missing the boat, because they're the ones that are actually going to educate you as to what enough is enough. And, I don't want to give away the whole fish, but I just like you to think that, it's going to smell awful well when it's finished. So we're going to be getting to those questions and more, and bring on Jaime right after these messages. Welcome to Turning the Table, the most progressive weekly podcast for today's food and beverage industry, featuring staff-centric operating solutions for restaurants in the hashtag New Hospitality Culture. Join Jim Taylor of Benchmark 60 and Adam Lamb as they turn the tables on the prevailing operating assumptions of running a restaurant in favor of innovative solutions to our industry's most persistent challenges. Thanks for joining us. And now, on to the show. This episode is made possible by eVocalize. eVocalize makes complex local digital marketing push-button easy for anyone. Empower your franchises with programs that automatically optimize performance and program spending across Google, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, all from one easy-to-use collaborative marketing platform. To find out more, go to turningthetablepodcast.com/eVocalize. And we'd like to welcome Jaime Mansour, the VP of Operations of True Food Kitchens, into the studio.
Welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. I'm doing great. Good morning, Adam. Good morning, Jim. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's such a pleasure, sir. As I mentioned to you in our little DM swap that we had the other day, I'm a big fan of the concept. I remember how it started. I'd like to say that I've been to a bunch of them, but I haven't. But from what I understand, you're coming to North Carolina soon.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we're excited. We've got two actually opening. One in end of next year, and then another one in 2025. So we're coming to your home.
Fantastic. And thank you very much.
Yeah, Adam, if you haven't been, you're definitely missing out. I think I've only been to 2 locations, but it's always for sure a go-to if we're, down in the US. So We got to get one in Canada eventually here, Jamie. Get one in your backyard.
I'm very much trying, right? As one of the only Canadians in this group, this is the button I'm trying to push all the time. So
fair enough.
As the only Canadian in the group. Now, Jamie, that's kind of an interesting place to start. So for those who aren't perhaps familiar with the concept itself and your story, can you kind of give us an idea of, where the concept started, how you came to be?
Sure.
You had to cross the border in order to jump on this opportunity, from what I understand.
Yeah. So I had heard of this brand, and really the gentleman who started this brand, Sam Fox, and then Dr. Andrew Weil, I'd heard about this brand about 10 years ago. And in my old previous role, the CEO of our company had really talked really highly of True Food and what they were doing, and really of Sam Fox. And so I still remember my first trip, 2012, with my girlfriend, who's now my wife. It was the Santa Monica location. And as a restaurateur for, 20 plus years, walking into a restaurant and seeing the hosts happy, the servers happy, the chefs, to my heart, because I was a chef to start my career, in almost the middle of the dining room, prepping the food in front of you. I was really just, encapsulated by what the brand was. So much so, when you travel to the US from Canada, you try to hit at different spots. And I ate at True Food 4 days in a row. And I remember telling my wife, if I ever get a chance to work for this group, I'm going to jump at it. Fast forward to 2016. I applied, I think, for probably every single job on the website for True Food Kitchen, including restaurant manager, sous chef, and I got a call back, and I ended up staging in Phoenix, and the first location, which was in Phoenix, in Biltmore, which is about 5 minutes from where our office is right now, and they liked me. They gave me an offer. I was a previous vice president of operations, and they asked me if I would come to the company and run my own location, which my ego took a little shot, but I was excited just to get down and work for the group, and started my journey in the Denver location in 2016.
And there's some good story about that Denver location I think we're going to get into, but that must have been an interesting leap to just move, like you said, take the ego hit, take the family across the border and all that kind of thing. But so besides seeing the prep happening in the dining room, or basically in the middle of the dining room, they're not prepping on a restaurant dining room table, obviously, but for those that haven't been to the concept, but things like how good the food was and eating there every day, and seeing how the place operated. Once you started to meet people in the organization, obviously you had that same type of pull, right? What was it about the company when you started talking to them that made you make that call?
Well, I would say first, as a previous chef, the food was, that's really the thing that catches you right off the get-go is how we prepare the food, the real ingredients in the food, the way we handle our food, the way we source our food. A lot of restaurants claim to be healthy, but we actually were started by a renowned doctor of integrative medicine. So the food was the first part. But I really think the people side and the culture of where the brand really thought about people and growth and development and career paths, that was really the thing that made me really feel like I was part of something big and great. And really, when I was, talking to my colleagues or friends, they were like, I can't believe you're going to the US to work for a group. And I'm like, it's not just a restaurant group though, right? And to be able to talk about the way we talk about people and culture, and really believe in it. For me, that was a huge part of moving my family. And it didn't go without some struggles. I remember the drive from Denver to Calgary and my wife crying the whole time, wondering what we were doing. But I want to take a leap of faith. And when you believe in something like I believed in it, you kind of go all in. And that's kind of how I felt at the time. So
amazing. And now you've been with the company for how many years?
Yeah, 7 years. 7 years this past July. So it's been a journey for me.
Wow. Well, congrats on the success. Like you said, leap of faith, but with the right organization, it's paid off. So, okay. So we were talking before we jumped on about this story about the Denver experience. And I think a lot of the sort of conversation and discussion say we want it to be about this, investing in people and making sure that they feel like they're a part of the business, which can be a bit of a sticky discussion in the restaurant industry. Whether people are replaceable or what's the career path, or is there even one? Can you tell us a little bit about the story of what Denver was like when you got there, where it is now, what the process was like a little bit, and
Sure.
sort of.
Yeah, well, when you get hired into a company, You hope your first project is, the best run store in the brand. And at this point, we had 10 locations, and Denver was number 10 out of number 10. I think it saw, 6 GMs and 6 executive chefs in a 4-year span. Turnover was, well over probably 150 to 200%. There was really just a lack of culture in the restaurant. And so when I got into that restaurant, your first inkling is, how do you attack maybe profit, or how do you attack sales? But, I really felt like for me is like, how am I going to attack people? And how am I going to like kind of gain this trust of this team and move us in the right direction? And, it was interesting for me as someone who didn't really know too much about the brand when I started, but I knew a ton about people and what that looked like. I went in there and, the first 3 months, I'd really kind of told my direct report, like, we're not going to worry about profit. We're going to worry about, career paths. We're going to worry about having one-on-one conversations. We're going to really get this team and this boat moving in the right direction. And, I was really lucky at the time to have a director who, kept his hands away from talking about, some of the words you don't want to talk about, right? The labor and the food cost and what we were doing. And I was like, hey, what are we doing with people? And, for me, that was the first inkling of just walking in here, creating a foundation of trust, and then really kind of practicing what I preached, right? It was, you had a bad shift, you spoke about it. You had a great shift, you high-fived about it. And then you started really digging into staff and what was making them tick, how long they've been in the restaurant, what were some of the things that they, listening to your team. And that's such a huge part of sometimes where operators miss is your team will know the answers. And our staff knew the answers. They knew we couldn't get food out fast enough. They knew service maybe wasn't quick enough. Maybe they knew the facility wasn't clean enough. And so, we focused on that. And I think I started in September of 2016. We were the number 10 location. And when we got to January 2017, we were the number 1 location in the brand. And here we are 7 years later, and that store is, I think, a top 3 store in the brand for us. So I'd like to think the work we did with the team there really paid dividends. And now you see it. That's the true nature of, I think, this business, right? You send the right message, and here we are 7 years later, and it's right there. So it was very much, I wouldn't say it was an overnight success with a lot of hard work. But I will say the work that happened was really more, 90% people focused, because I think people get you the results in this business. And the 10% we were getting was, growing sales, growing profit, no turnover in the restaurant. So, I always feel like that's, in 7 years in the brand, it's one of the things that I'm most proud of is where that restaurant kind of ended up. So
you just commented on something. I just have to touch on this. You said that you were listening to the team about things like ticket times and food quality and restaurant cleanliness. I think that is rare, because even in my experience in restaurant management, Adam, I'm curious your take on this too. Typically, the stuff that we listen to the staff about is, I want a better schedule. I want a bigger section. I want to learn a new station. It's stuff like that, right? It's for the staff to feel comfortable to come forward and say, ticket times aren't good. There's got to be some trust there, I think, right? And some safety. Yeah.
And I think you need to one of the first things I remember it like the back of my hand. The first week I was in there, I grabbed some of the best people, or who I thought the best people were, and I sat them at a table and I said, the next hour is just going to be about you talking to me about the things that you love in this place and the things that are going wrong. And the common denominator, and maybe the top 3, was communication and effective communication, right? Trust between both teams, right? And then the ability to be able to hold people accountable to a standard of, right, excellence. And it's funny, you listen to your people, they'll give you the answers. You just have to kind of push your ego aside and understand, right? It's one common goal. And what's the goal in restaurants is to make the guest experience really, really great and have people that are really excited to come to work, right?
I think that's probably point number 1 in this discussion of reinvesting in your associates and team is, doesn't take anything, didn't cost you any more money. It cost time, which of course has an equivalent dollar value. But, when you talk about the first question that you ask yourself when you're walking into an operation that's running as the brand new guy, how do I gain the trust of my people? Because they'll never get to a point where they feel comfortable enough to actually tell you what's wrong unless you invest in that in that emotional piggy bank. So I think the way that you went about it is both smart, both intuitively and emotionally. But this whole idea of like step number one is ask your team and ask your team in such a way that it allows them an opportunity to actually be honest. Right. I remember clearly being in walking into an operation where nobody trusted upper management at all. So I could ask all the questions I wanted, but I was never going to get any answers that were actually going to be actionable or was going to change anything. And those who did speak up typically had an agenda.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
But that time of like, and the other thing that strikes me is, good on your boss that, he actually listened to you and said, okay, for 3 months, we're not going to talk about profit. We're not going to, and a lot of, I imagine that there's lots of folks out there that don't have that benefit of someone who's going to watch your back, so that you can work on your people first. So not only were you very forward thinking, but so was that person. And I think one of the things that you mentioned right before we got on the show is kind of a testament to the time served and the effort exerted in that Denver location is that chef is now your director of culinary for the organization.
Yeah.
Over 40 restaurants. I mean, that's pretty cool.
It's a proud moment to know that me and the chef started at the same time, and now we're both sitting in an office trying to make a bigger impact on this brand. And so we always kind of pinch ourselves when we travel. We get on planes together, and we were just in Florida, last week. We're in New York next week, and it's always just like I can't imagine how far we came, because there was some tough days where you're like, are we in the right spot? What are we doing here, right? 6 days a week and thinking about, is the juice worth the squeeze? But, I think full circle to kind of think of the journey. I think sometimes just a testament to the people, and I always say the people in that location, which I'm still proud of. I can go to that Denver location and, maybe 20 of the staff that I hired back then are still there 7 years later, which to me is like, it's a place of home there. So
for sure.
Jamie, I have one question before we move on, because it seems, the video shot is pretty self-explanatory, but there's, for those who are listening to the podcast, there's this huge poster right in back of your head with the Nike swoosh above it. Yeah. And from what I understand, you take that everywhere with you because you spent time as a basketball player, did you not?
Yes, sir. Yeah. I'm big basketball fan, a big basketball player growing up.
So how did your time with sports and, your identification with the Nike brand, do you find that helped influence the way that you viewed team and team performance within the hospitality industry?
Yeah, great question. Number one, I would say if I ever interview somebody who played sports, I always feel like we're on the right path because they understand teamwork. They understand accountability. I think, my first love in this world was sports and basketball. And I really felt like getting into the restaurant business was like the closest I got to how I felt as a crowd cheering for you, or the camaraderie you feel in a huddle or a locker room was the same thing you feel in pre-shifts or lineups, or when you see a guest really happy, or when you see somebody growing and developing. And so I always feel like, the two loves, besides obviously my wife and my children, were basketball first and then the restaurant business second. And I've been very, very lucky to do both, basketball for, 10 to 15 years of my life, and now restaurant business for 25 plus years. But I always believe sports sets you up for the success you need. And it teaches you accountability. It teaches you honesty. It teaches you, for me, communication, which was a huge thing, being able to communicate on the court with your teammates or with your coach and take coaching. That was something that I really, learned at a young age, how to take coaching and be accountable to it. And then really in this business, it's about empathy, and it's about listening, and it's about communication and communicating effectively. And I think sports sets you up for that in this business, right? So
would you say that it also kind of at least introduces the idea of kind of selflessness and, service to that particular mission of, whether it's winning or winning the shift or, and that's not something that comes natural to folks of a certain age group, because, so much is about them, and like, how do you actually shift that from an immature standpoint to a mature standpoint if you don't have something like the cauldron of competition in order to kind of distill that out of you?
Yeah. Great point. winning for the shift is something that resonates for me, right? We win daily, right? AM and PM. And I always thought that was funny. It's like, let's just win today, and then we can talk about tomorrow. Obviously, in this business, you have to be thoughtful and you have to plan, and the best leaders are the best planners. But I mean, don't make it harder than it is. Win today, right? It's Thursday. Win today. So
true. You were talking a minute ago about, and you didn't use this term, but kind of doing focus groups with some of the people in the restaurants to get some feedback. Back to one sort of question about that. Not to jump all over the place, but I remember there were times in my corporate career where I think we attempted to do that type of stuff and maybe didn't do a very good job at it, because we gathered people together in an effort to get good feedback and build community and build trust and whatnot. But then we didn't do a very good job of actually acting on the feedback. So it actually, I think the mistake that we made was it actually worked against us, because the team went, well, we told you, and you didn't do anything. So was there a specific, process or anything that you did to go, okay, now we've been told, now we gotta act? Because that's part of, some of those people are probably some of the ones that still work there, I would assume.
Yeah. I mean, great question. I mean, when you were talking, the first thing that came into my head was like, a goal without a plan is a wish. So it would have been great to sit down and hear about all these things and not do anything. And I think what we did in this group, or what I've done in multiple times in my career, is you make sure you write it down. You come out of it there with 3 to 5, not 100, 3 to 5 like main points, right? And then you got to build a strategy, and then those points have to be spoken about daily. And I think in business, the best leaders, they don't talk about the plan. They got a strategy, and then they execute the plan. And so for us, it was really about like, what are the 3 things we're going to take out of this meeting? And then we're going to talk about them until we don't have to talk about, because they're part of our culture, right? And then we're going to find 3 more things to talk about. And then for me, I always feel like in this business, you talk about people, you talk about communication, you talk about trust, you talk about these things, you get results. It's never, there's a saying of like, don't focus on the P&L to manage the P&L, focus on your people. And so for us, it was really people stuff, right? Like, hey, we're going to make a decision as a group that we're going to trust each other, that if we make a mistake on the floor, that you're going to be able to grab a manager and know that manager is going to have your back and make sure that guest has been recovered. Or, hey, if the kitchen is running long ticket times and they seem stressed out, you as a manager are going to get ahead of that table and talk to that table and make sure that they're, they've been communicated with. So I think it was a plan, then a strategy, and then you came back to the plan every single week, every single pre-shift, and you made sure you gauge your success off that. How are we doing? And then the ultimate success is, like I said, 3 months later, are sales growing? Are people happy? Are your guests happy? And they'll tell you what you need to know. And then you got to find new problems, which I think is the best part of this business. That's why I think the ones that stay in it long enough know that not every day is the same. So.
Yeah, it's really not about the act of getting the people together and trying to listen to them. It's about the action that comes from it.
Yeah,
definitely.
I was reminded of a place where I worked, where every year they did an associate survey that was supposed to be anonymous. And I remember kind of cheerleading this entire process when I got there. It's like, this is your opportunity to tell management, where it's at and where we need to go. It was coordinated by HR. And again, there was this kind of distrust that, okay, so we've done this before and nothing ever happened. Right. So it's one thing to actually offer the opportunity for feedback. And operators can now, with technology the way it is, they can use sites like Typeform, Jotform, SurveyMonkey to create these anonymous surveys, not only for their guests, but also for their associates. But then, you need to follow that up by sharing that feedback and then your plan to actually execute. Because there's nothing worse than like, hey, I would really like your opinion just so I can ignore it.
Yeah.
Tough place to be, and not a place you want to be, right? Like,
exactly.
Let me hear your opinion and not do nothing with it. So,
well, to Jim, and I think that was kind of, I think that's what you were kind of alluding to, like having all this information and then not really doing anything about it, right? And then I think it's probably human nature to like consider that for a moment and then pivot to somebody else that maybe you quote unquote trust more, like the guest or managers in your area or stuff like that, when in fact your associates are the ones who are telling you.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, Jamie, you were talking a little bit about, again, a comment you made earlier around 150 to 200% turnover in that one location when it wasn't going well.
Yeah.
Now, you don't have to share with us a specific percentage of turnover for the company at this point, but are there things that True Food does or that you do that are like non-negotiable? These are things we do in order to drive good retention rates?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I think that's an ongoing for us, like a mission for us, is to try to get ourselves in a position where the turnover, because I think, I mean, obviously everybody kind of hit that wave in COVID where you're losing people and people are leaving the industry for other jobs and finding their careers. I think for us, I think on my own personal like journey with I think turnover has really been about being really honest with people and showing them that there's career paths for them. One of the things that we've really kind of, I would say in the last few years really stuck to is just a mentorship and key hourly program, right? Like almost like an apprentice program where people can, as servers or bartenders, as hosts or to-go people that can really get into this position or into the leadership aspect. And I think that's been a huge part of what we do. I make no mistake though, I think the stores that do it the best for us on the brand are the ones that speak about it more, right? They speak about great culture. They speak about great training. They sit down and talk to people. One of the things I did as a director that I thought really helped me is I made our GMs, put up staff lists in their office. And then each month it was, the GM or the AGM or the chef's responsibility to sit down with every single team member and really go through strengths and go through weaknesses and what do they want to learn and where do they see themselves as a month. If you were a grill cook and you wanted to learn, a saute station or a wok station, here's how we're going to get you there. And so I really think just like looking at people as people who want to do more and really investing in that conversation and being honest with people. I think the best restaurants in our brand have the leaders that actually put that first, right? And you walk into a restaurant and you can see the looks on their face. They're happy. They engage with you. They engage with the guests. And I think our ability, number one, I always feel like we've got a really a leg up on the competition because our food and what we stand for is, really at the top, I think, in this cuisine. But I also believe like the way we look and we talk to our people and the way we treat our people as we move forward. I mean, it's almost been overnight, I think, for us this last year just to see turnover go down. I think, if I'm not mistaken, management turnover this year is, about 15% down from last year, and that's what you want. Hourly turnover is, close to 20% down from last year. And that's just from us having more one-on-ones, having more conversations, really doing more career pathing for people, and then really giving them an opportunity to see this business like I saw this business 25 years ago. And I think that's a huge part of this business in general, or any successful business is people, right? And moving your people in the right direction and then being honest with them and listening to them. So
what's your thought on the connection between autonomy and retention rates? I was reading an article this morning about how Apple is moving more and more towards this, rather than take your best people and put more work on them, take your best people and give them more freedom.
Yeah, great. I mean, I think there's a level of autonomy in this business that you earn with trust. And I think for us, I mean, obviously at a leadership level, nobody ever wants to work for somebody who micromanages their performance. I think, to be honest, it's one of the things I really enjoyed when I first got into this group is, we had system standards, things that, process to get us from A to B, but the autonomy that I had and that I think we still have to be able to find solutions, to be able to come up with some of those answers, and then to be able to have somebody on the back end that if they don't know the answers, you can talk to. I think there's a fine line. I think, autonomy is gained by trust and by performance, but I also believe somebody said this to me and I thought this was a really, really great saying is like, it's okay to walk up to people, put your hand on them and say, I trust you. And I know you're going to be great. Now go be great. And I think sometimes in this business, we try to micromanage everything. And I think leaders need some sort of autonomy. I know hourly staff, if we've got great hourly staff that are great at making money, great with the guests, we want these people to be great. If we have to step in and, give them communication about things that we want to see improved or just show gratitude to the performance, that's where I think, our jobs as leaders, right? Praise, right? And if things aren't going great, coach, be honest and and then be celebrating with them when they get the results that you want. So
amazing.
At that point, Jamie, would you also agree that, with a certain amount of parameters, you want to empower your hourly staff or your line staff to be able to, say, move with a certain amount of autonomy to make sure that the guest is happy and that they end up leaving happy, so that, maybe there's appetizers or desserts that they're empowered to be able to afford, or, the great interaction between the front of the house and the back of the house where like there's never a quibble about, having to refire something, or, those type of things. That's also kind of a great breeding ground for that future type of autonomy. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. It's still the thing that I still love really dearly about the brand is, it was always like, we just fix it, right? Yes. Our saying was always, yes is the answer. Now what's the question, right? If there was a problem and a guest, hey, I have a first-time guest at this table, we want to be able to buy an appetizer. It was like, you've got the autonomy to go do that. Or, hey, if we find out it's somebody's birthday in one of our restaurants, it's an automatic free dessert, and the servers get to do that. And from a chef perspective, which, how I started my career as a chef, I think the autonomy that we have and that we give our chefs when it comes to the creativity or creating dishes. I was in one of our restaurants and one of our chefs, I had my daughter with me, created this, trio of desserts that I wasn't asked for. I was like, hey, Jamie, I made this, right? Like, knowing you were coming and I wanted to show you. And I was like, well, that's the type of stuff. And you could see the look on his face when he brought it to the table. And then the look on my daughter's face when she got to eat it was even better. So.
Wow.
Are there, well, let me just back up for a second. There's been a lot of press made about shifts in some organizations since the pandemic to try to communicate care, safety, value to the associates by upgrading their benefits packages and or their rates. Within your organization, True Food Kitchen, is that something that you've also focused on, or did you always kind of had a really solid package so that, folks aren't leaving for a quarter? Well, of course, we know that no one's going to leave for a quarter, but because I was looking at your website and it seemed to me that your benefits package is incredibly well-rounded and balanced, not only from an operator standpoint, but from an associate standpoint. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, great. And number one, I think in this day and age, in this business, right, mental health, wellness is such a huge part of what we do. And, obviously for me coming from Canada and our healthcare and going to the US and trying to learn it firsthand, there was a little bit of a slope, and anybody who's Canadian will understand that. But I do think like we've been able to take our health benefits over the last 7 years and really make improvements that help our hourly employees and give them opportunities that they might not have had. And really at an hourly level, those are sometimes in big companies where they struggle, right? Being able to give these people benefits off hours worked and off, tenure. And for a lot of our hourly employees, because our turnover has been so good from an hourly ranks in a lot of our, states, we've been able to protect them with better benefits. And from a management perspective, it's only gotten better, which I like over the last 7 years, even from joining the brand to where it was when I started to where it is now. I think the people in charge of that department have done a phenomenal job just putting it front of mind and really making it something we talk about. It's actually a part of, when we talk about quarterly meetings, health and wellness is a huge part of our group, right? We can't be talking about our food and not talking about mental health or not talking about health for our people. So I've been actually really, really impressed by what we've done as a brand. I still think there's work to be done. And I think as long as we're having a conversation as a group and talking about what's best for our people, it's only going to get better for us. So yeah, great question.
And can you talk a little bit about what your experience has been, or perhaps what your team's experience has been working with Hooray Health, which is your healthcare partner?
Yeah, my experience on a personal level has been, phenomenal. I think, you're a little bit tentative when you get over here from a different country, and healthcare is really paid for. I would say that lightly, right? I was telling you guys the story of like getting into the US and trying to just understand the system coming from where I come from, where everything was paid for. And so my experience always, number one, you have to have great people that can talk about it at our level. And we have some really good benefits people that really walk me through it. But then as a father to 3 kids, and the amount of times that these kids hurt themselves or end up going to the emergency or to the doctor's office, just from a personal level, the healthcare and the way we look at it has been so great for my family. And it's almost like we've got 2 boys that are born in Canada and a daughter that's born in the U.S. And I would beg to say, but besides the charge for our American daughter, the healthcare and the benefits were way better for us. And then from an hourly perspective and just a management perspective, I think our work with Hooray Health and what they've done for us, and we really saw it with COVID, right? You can imagine the amount of times Hooray Health was involved in testing our teams, making sure that was available for our teams, keeping it front of mind. And in the U.S. and where we are in Phoenix right now, or any state, I mean, they're a huge part of just making sure that people stay healthy. And they offer a service and the availability for us, which I really had never come from in Canada. So I think they've been a really great partner for us. And I want to continue to kind of think that that's something that, even from a mental health standpoint, is something we got to keep talking about. Because I do think in this business, there's been a huge shift. And just even having a conversation, it's been a huge part of why it shifted.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely agree. So, Jamie, we covered a lot here. Typically, and I always enjoy talking about this because when I first started this podcast, one of the things we wanted to be able to provide was, one, we decided to do it on Thursdays because maybe somebody could listen to something that they can actually do in their own restaurant going into the weekend. Like, what can I think about differently? But we also wanted to try to make sure that there was some sort of actionable, 2 or 3 things that they should be considering if they're operating a restaurant. So do you have a couple of things like that you could say, okay, hey, if I was going to start over again, or if I was running my own place, here's 2 or 3 things I would be trying to do, whether it's starting today or thinking about improving?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's probably 100, but I'll see if I can give you there's so much that I've learned in this business. And I feel like I've been very fortunate to work with some really great people that, you take the best from the great people. I mean, just even the topic of this, this conversation and staff and the return on investment in staff, I think there'd be one thing that I would always say is, like, I think people make this business go round. And I think if I were starting today, the first thing I would tell any operator is, right, if you're not in front of open, honest communication with your team members daily, right, and have that set up and plan to do, right, so it's part of your team's strategy is we're going to talk to our people both front and back and talk to them about, the business, talk to them about their personal lives and their career paths. I mean, I think you're missing an opportunity. I think number 2 is listen. It's funny when you grow up in this business, and a lot of leaders I met are very type A, right? Listen more than you talk. And I think in this business, I think sometimes you listen to your people and you get the right answers. You're not going to know all the right answers. Even in my position, I ask for constant feedback, and I think that's what makes you good, right? You don't know all the answers, and I think listening to your people. So talking to your people, listening to your people, and then I do believe, like, strategy in this business and having a plan and following through is such a huge part of what we do. And I think you said it, Adam and Jim. It's great to have conversations, but if hourly team members or managers are talking to you and telling you things that they need, you got to listen to them. And it's your job as a leader to make sure that they're successful, right? And you're investing in them, and the investment that you put into your team is investment you're getting back with career paths and with growth in this brand and with more money as you grow your career. So, I think talking to your people, daily, I think listening to your people and really, and being empathetic to that. And then I think having a strategy on how to get your people better and move them forward. I mean, to me, that's one thing that the best leaders that I've ever worked with do better than anybody else. So.
Well said.
Brilliant. Jamie, we want to, thank you very much for joining us today. And you've certainly given us a lot to think about. And I've tried to keep up as much as possible of, like, sharing it in the chat and making sure that we're sharing this. But we're hoping that you might come back and join us again and kind of let us know about the growth of the company. And as you start, thinking about Boulder and Charlotte and hopefully Canada in the next 12 months. Because I know that you guys are also thinking about a new concept, right?
Yeah, we have we're a couple things happening. We're opening in Tucson, which is Dr. Wild, who started our brand, his backyard. So we're excited about that. But then we got a fast casual kind of spinoff of True Food opening probably Q1, January, February, March of next year. No name picked out yet, but we do think right? We're pretty excited to test our realm. I think obviously quick service restaurants are the way of the future. If you see in the U.S., they're really growing and expanding, and we think we can, bring healthy food to that. So that's exciting for us. But we're excited about Tucson. We're excited about the fast casual concept next year, and then, we're excited to come see you, Adam. I will make sure that you're part of our opening team. So we won't make you go back in the kitchen though. So
I don't mind strapping an apron on. I still got my clogs. It's all good.
Yeah, I know you could do it. So.
Well, thank you very much, Jim. Last words.
Jamie, just so good to reconnect again, and thanks so much for joining us. We'll definitely have to have you back again because we could go on about some of this stuff for hours. So always great to catch up, and congrats on all the success with the group.
Yeah, appreciate you both. Thanks very much. Good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you again. Good to see you again, Jim.
You too.
I wish your daughter a belated happy birthday. I saw that.
Thank you.
So you're very welcome. Have a
That's
great
awesome.
day, gentlemen. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Jamie.
Take
Really
care.
appreciate your time. Thanks for watching another episode of Turning the Table with myself, Adam Lamb, and Jim Taylor, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Turning the Table with me, Adam Lamb, and Jim Taylor. We're on a mission to change the food and beverage industry for the better by focusing on staff mental health, physical and emotional well-being, by proactively measuring and managing staff workloads. Join other hospitality professionals co-creating the #NewHospitalityCulture by subscribing to our weekly newsletter at www.turningthetable.podcast.com/news. In every edition, you'll find innovative solutions ready to test and validate in your operation this weekend. Plus, listen to exclusive bonus content just for you. Connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram at Turning the Table Podcast. If you found value in this episode, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. Give us a star rating. It helps other hospitality professionals just like you find the show. Or better yet, grab the show link and share it with a friend or colleague who you want to see succeed. Thanks for stepping in and speaking out for an industry, craft, and fraternity that serves us all. Remember, retention is the new cool, y'all. This podcast was written, directed, and produced by me, Adam Lamb, and Jim Taylor. Turning the Table is a production of Realignment Media.